don't know about you, but if I were asked to carve a canyon, I'd probably start with explosives or at least a jackhammer. I definitely wouldn't start by gathering water. But of course, the sheer power of the Colorado River has cut layer after layer into that mighty formation, creating the Grand Canyon. Water's the opposite of what I would expect would be needed to sculpt that mighty structure. Today, I want to tell you about a series of beginnings in my life that are personal stories where the opposites are the exact opposite. The outcomes are the exact opposite of what would be expected. I like to believe it's a rule, so I call it the law of counterintuitive. I want to share how this law helped me find blessings in the midst of a difficult childhood. I found riches in the midst of economic downturn, and I found strengths in the midst of my weakness. I hope you'll join me in my life and my heart as I take you on this journey. Although I hadn't named it as such until my 40s, the law of counterintuitive had always been with me. My early childhood began in upstate New York, and we had a mom and a dad, and initially we took photos at Olin Mills. The home that we lived in sat on a cute little hill that overlooked a little town. The name of this street was called Pleasant Street. On this hill, my sister and I would feverishly pedal our matching cars to the bottom, trying to beat each other while having to turn fiercely to the right to avoid turning into traffic. This home was surrounded by beautiful mountains and scenery, but it was filled with broken people and broken promises. I'm sad to say that the worst of humanity broke into my home and abducted my joy. By the time I was 6, the protected became the hunted. Marriage became divorce, and my skipping down the street mentality hid lifelessly in a closet. A wide path of destruction cut through my heart and my life. And instead, at that moment of my family creating a resting spot for normalcy and safety, we opted for a monkey. That's right, we got a monkey. So welcome to my house, come on in. Please hang your coat to the left on the hook. We're gonna get a snack before we start our homework. This is my mother and my sisters and my brothers, and this is our monkey, Samantha. I'm sure that really helped with the normalcy. That was my world. So at that point, we realized, of course, that the monkey wasn't gonna help our life. So we decided that we needed a vacation. My mom went to AAA to get maps that highlighted the trip, stack of maps, that highlighted the trip from upstate New York down to Orlando, Florida, because Orlando had just opened Disney World, and we decided that we wanted to join that paradise. So we all hopped in the back of our parents' station wagon and headed backward into our paradise. It turns out that if you head backward into paradise, things don't turn out exactly as planned. About a week into our journey, we got a phone call that our house caught on fire and was a total loss. And I knew that I was going to lose my green television set that had frog stickers on it and the princess books that I had so lovingly gathered, but I didn't expect that I was actually going to also lose the relatives and friends that lived in that town. My sister and I were told that we were going to put new roots down in Orlando, although our entire family tree was firmly planted in upstate New York. As we climbed into the van that day to leave, the mattresses were stacked so high that my sister and I had to lay flat and face forward like Wonder Woman and Supergirl, headed into our future. My mom thought it was best to keep our departure a secret, so I wasn't able to tell my father or my grandparents or my friends that I was leaving, and we quietly exited our lives. Unfortunately, this wasn't the first move, and it wouldn't be the last. I think my mom thought we could actually literally change our lives if we changed our zip code. So we tried that a lot. I'll let you on a secret, it doesn't work. So we moved all over the United States from one coast to another and down to Florida, and then we navigated neighborhoods. At one point, we lived in a home that was so close to the next home that we moved to that I literally picked up the silverware drawer and walked around the block and placed it into the new home where the flatware would go. So this sounds really gloom and doom by now, but as I wanted to give you that taste of that colorful childhood, because for me, as I sat even in that childhood, I thought that I would grow up to be somebody who moved multiple times or married many men. And it turned out, as I sat in my 25-year marriage and peered at my seemingly successful children, that the wrecking waters of the Colorado River also impacted my life and created a solid structure and a foundation where I was able to exit all that pain and find hope, shockingly, and compassion. And I was able to exit on that stairway of love and also with a little bit of humor thrown in. So right after I recognized this law of counterintuitive, I was able to test it. The kids, they don't tell you this part when you're having children, that they're going to leave you one day, but they did, and they went to college. And I could not believe the weight of that storm of sadness that rolled into my life and put down roots. And I decided I needed a way to try to combat that depression that I was feeling every morning. People talk about exercise helping, and I'm not so sure about the heart rate thing, but for me, I went early in the morning and I saw sunrises. And those sunrises became these wonderful, bold contrasts of reds and yellows and purples and blues. And I just marveled at them every morning and was excited in anticipation of what was going to come next. So this one morning as I set out, I ended up seeing that there were no clouds in the sky that day. And I thought, this is going to be the most magnificent of all days with the sunrise, because the clouds weren't a distraction and they weren't going to hinder the loveliness of the sun. What I found that morning is that the clouds actually provide the texture and depth and fragment that light, and it's the clouds that make it beautiful. And I wondered in my life if those clouds of my past and my present were actually allowing my vulnerabilities to appear a little bit prettier. Maybe I would have been blinding in some of my loveliness without those clouds. So I wondered that and really kind of leaned into those clouds of vulnerability. And before that law of counterintuitive, I thought clouds were just incoming storms. In the fall of 2008, unlike our friend over here who was getting rich, we were dying. And as the economy took a nosedive, those clouds came back and I guess helped us look more vulnerable, like we're better looking now because of that. Our sales decreased 40%, and we had to cut a number of staff. And in the midst of this, trying to determine that we didn't want to let go of any other people, we decided to sell that family home, that one where those clouds descended on my heart. And so we decided that we would sell the home, and at that same point in time, we found out that one of our employees, not someone else's employees, but our employees, was homeless. And he was living in his truck in our parking lot every night. He was sleeping there. In the morning, he would get up and take a shower in our sink. When I heard that, I thought we could reach into our soon-to-be empty home and grab a mattress and bring that in for him to have comfort in our kind of emptying business. But in the spirit of the law of counterintuitive, this wasn't about us losing our business. It wasn't about the end of our company. This was about us rediscovering the sweet fragrances of each other's strengths. And I am so honored to tell you that I love the sweet aroma of my husband's integrity in the midst of all this adversity, that he still led with kindness and truth and cared about people in our company. Using that love and counterintuitive, we invited people into our business and into ourselves. We leaned into each other. In our community, we became a neighbor and a friend and a refuge. During that time, I also discovered that my pain is my purpose. Just like people who have bad acne and they grow up to be dermatologists, I was meant to help people with compassion and love. So I decided to take this test on spiritual gifts. And I know it sounds super spiritual, but there was this test online that I found, and it had a variety of, I think, 15 different options for spiritual gifts. And I thought I would have giving and wisdom and faith. That's what I thought I was going to get when I took this spiritual test. My number one gift was administration. I was so irritated. That's not a gift. That's not a spiritual gift. That's a company gift. That's what you want to hire in your company. It's not who you want to be your mom or your wife. So I was so frustrated, and in the midst of that, I wanted to retake that test so I could throw the results. But sadly, at that time, the unthinkable happened in Orlando, and a thief lurked in those shadows and stole the lives of 49 people. As a mom, I was so grieved for all those other moms that were going to have to bury their children. And I didn't know, I couldn't even begin to imagine what that felt like. And then realizing, because my parents are older, we're talking about, honestly, preparing for funeral expenses. So how do you manage as a parent 49 lives being taken and then the cost to pay for that? But I knew that with the help of many people in this room, many people, we were able to form a floral crusade, and we were able to offer free funeral flowers to every mother, to every family in that awful tragedy. And when we, thank you. When we offered those flowers, it's funny, I went to my husband, I was like, can we do these flowers? And he was like, you're killing me. And so I thought, there's people here that will stand with us. And that's not easy, I don't know for you to do, but it's definitely not easy for me to do, to reach out and ask for help. But we reached out and asked this group of friends, like close friends we have as florists. And within moments, everybody said yes, they wanted in. And so then that gave us confidence to go ahead and just announce we were going to offer these flowers. But we don't want to just offer them. We wanted to actually relentlessly pursue every family to give them these flowers for the service. Due to the media surrounding this, none of that information was offered. As soon as the information was made public on the victims' names, I immediately went in and set up a Google Doc so we could share across our company all the details that we needed to track and all the names, and be able to meet that need. In some cases where we didn't even know, we didn't even contact the family. We just contacted the funeral home, found out that there was a casket, there wasn't a casket spray, and we sent flowers. And my point in telling you this is that in that time period, I realized that we wouldn't have been able to actually execute. We would have had a great idea, but we wouldn't have been able to actually meet that need for all those families and love them like I knew we could as an industry if I didn't have that counterintuitive gift of administration. So after this all happened, I sat in the awe of knowing that my gift of administration may have been spiritual after all. And I was super glad to be able to use that. When I look back at my life's experiences and the group of people that sit before me, people who are used to delivering bouquets of hope and sympathy and compassion, it only made sense that we would all be the people who delivered the love and literally the light in the midst of all that darkness. Thank you so much for allowing me to tell you about my journey into the law of counterintuitive. I hope it helps you look for unbelievably great things in the midst of awfulness. Thank you.